All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Comic Book Herald Live. Hey, everybody. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor in chief of comicbookherald.com. Joined today by artist Andre Lima Araujo. We're going to be talking about Phenomena Book 2, out now via Abrams Comics Arts, as well as your comics career. Possibly, we'll be joined by your collaborator, Brian Michael Bendis, here in a little bit. There may have been a slight scheduling snafu. We'll see. There were some hijinks on the back end. But thank you, Andre, for joining. Really appreciate you having you here. What time is it there where you're at?
Oh, right now it's 8 p.m. over here.
8 p.m. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very much for having me, of course.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no.
Arranging the space for us to talk about the book. We are very excited about it. So we've been doing some of these. So I'm very excited to talk more about this book that we crafted with so much love.
Yeah, no, very good. No, I loved Phenomena Book 1, which came out a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The Golden City of Eyes. We got Book 2 right now. Matilda's Quest
Mm-hmm.
is out. It's really more of an all ages kind of graphic novel. I think for folks who are less familiar, it's not YA. There's a huge push, I would say, or maybe it could be, I guess, but like there's a huge push for that market, right, and for reaching younger readers. But this one, I would say, it really is crafted, I think, with that kind of Akira is obviously an influential, huge touch point, but it's definitely it's something that a lot of folks can read and find value in. With book 2, I'm curious, Andre, or I guess actually let's just start here. For folks who are less familiar with Phenomena, kind of what was your involvement? How'd you get involved with the project? How'd you get connected with Brian? And let's just start there.
Okay. So yeah, you're right in your assessment. Phenomena became an all-age book. And it's funny because just a quick overview of what the book is about. The book is an adventure of 3 friends, basically. On book 1, we get to know the 3 friends, and they go to the Golden City of Eyes. That is like a magical place that it's under attack. It's a kind of a walking city, and in the end, they save the day. And on book 2, we go, which is the one that has been out for just a few weeks now. We go to Matilda's quest, literally. Like, we go back to her hometown and see what kind of place she's from. And when she has to sort a big conflict between 2 factions that are trying to take over, to take hold over the place where she's from, which is a town called Valencia Verona, which is actually London, with a layer of all the magical stuff that you saw in book 1 and now in book 2 as well. Because in the end, they leave all the characters, and this world that we created is a kind of not post-apocalyptic. Is something Brian usually describes as something more interesting than that, and I agree. A phenomena happened, and it changed the world that we live in, with all these touch points of an exploded imagination. So that's the basic framework that we had to work with, and we began with that, like a world where everything is possible. That was our starting point. And my involvement was that I worked with Brian for a short thing at DC Comics. It was for when he was launching Legion of Superheroes. So he did a couple of issues of that he called Millennium Legion of Superheroes. That was the launch point of the thing. It had the main artist of the book that was going to draw the book then, and it had also some other artists like Jim Lee and some other of Andrea Sorrentino also as well, some of the big names at DC. And he liked my stuff, but we had never worked together. And he reached out and he said if I wanted to do it. Obviously, I jumped in immediately. We had such a good time that we decided to do something together. At the time, we could have gone with more superhero stuff, Batman or Superman, but I really wanted to do creator-owned. I was trying to get into that place. And really the beginning of the series was me and Brian were supposed to change ideas. Like, let me see what ideas you have that have not been made yet, and I'll do the same. So I sent him some of my pitches, because I have a bunch of pitches that never materialized into any books. And he saw all that stuff all at once, and he never sent me his, so he lied to me. And he saw all that stuff, and he said, what if we did all of this? And this was unrelated material. like 5 pitches,
Mm-hmm.
some science fiction, some medieval, there was a fantasy one, there was all kinds of stuff, and I said, what do you mean? I don't understand it. And then he kind of had an idea for something, which was Phenomena, a very embryonic idea at that point. And he said, so he sent me like a tagline, and he said, instead of us being here trying to interpret it, why don't you pick it up and draw some stuff for it? So I started developing conceptual art, like character designs, a bunch of them, places, settings, and really mixing the settings and the characters already. Like I was actually drawing some kind of story that didn't have a plot, and my only concern at that point was that it felt like it belonged together, like it was a unified world visually. And Brian, at that point, I remember him asking only for a boy and a creature that would be like his guardian. So that's where Bolden and Spike come from. That was his only request. And I added Matilde, so the third character, and I said, I want a girl as well. You're in the mix. So we've got our trio like that. And then, as you wrote book 1, for example, he was telling me, like, this scene has 4 characters that you did on sheet number 1 of characters, for example. Or if you want, you can draw some new characters. So we were picking my ideas and my visuals, mixing it up with his ideas and his story settings and his action scenes and all that. And we were doing like this kind of everything is possible, as long as me and him would agree that it was a good thing and it belonged to the story. And in the beginning, we started chipping away at stuff that was a bit more violent, a bit more grown up, and we started slowly but surely understanding that the creation that we had in our hands was more all ages than hard sci-fi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was not a decision that we made from the get-go. That was something that we went to naturally. Yeah. And for example, issue or chapter 1 and 2, we didn't know it was an all-age book. It just felt right to go through that path. And once we had like almost the entire book done, we noticed that this is an all-age book because, and we started there was one panel in specific, just one from book 1 that I had to edit because it had a character showing the middle finger. And it felt out of place, when we did it at first, like it felt like it could be a possibility, but it was on chapter 2. And then when he had chapter 3 and 4 already done, Brian said, I don't like that guy showing the middle finger. I don't feel like it fits. And he was right. So I edited that out. I drew, it's a monster, and it's instead of him showing the middle finger, I have him just waving his hands like this. And that was like, we created the all-age situation, or we found out the all-age situation as we were making it, which was exciting at the time.
Yeah, for sure. So there's not like an R-rated, A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance version of the first couple chapters.
No, but there were no, because like we started, we really truly with it, like we were making it up as we were doing it. And it felt that was the tone, correct. But there were some stuff that I drew for characters, for example, that we didn't use because it was a bit more, it felt a bit more violent, like, for example, there were characters with guns and we left them out, or at least the guns were left out. And there are very few guns on book 1, and on book 2 there are none, for example.
Yeah.
On book 2, the difference between book 1 and 2 is that on 2 we knew very well what we were doing, and on 1 we were still discovering it. Right. So, like, for example, there are some characters that our characters find. So they begin in a city on book 1. Then there is a flashback that shows how Spike met Bolden, and then we go back to the first scene, and on that, and a group of people called Majestics appear, and some of them have a more scary looking science fiction type of design,
Yeah.
And that was because at that time when I designed those, we were not 100% into or sure what we were doing. And but still, the actions on the book were already under that tone.
What do you think was the biggest, or I guess actually, let's start here. So you said you had a bunch of pitches. So,
Mm-hmm.
over the course of your comics career, you're writing
Yeah.
down all these different ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and the collaboration with Brian begins as, you bringing kind of all your ideas to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Are there things from those pitches that like didn't make it into this that wish had, or are ideas you'd like to pursue in the future? Like, is there still meat on the bone there from that kind of original set of templates?
Oh, absolutely. Those were done stories. Like the stuff that I sent to Brian are proposals that are still very much on the table for me. Like this is completely new creation. Brian's idea of let's do all of this was more let's combine all of these design ideas
But you
rather
feel
than
like
all of this.
individually those still are
Yeah,
in
yeah,
play for you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And because, like I was saying, like eventually, like when you go, this book looks science fiction, but I don't think it's really science fiction. It's more science fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like Star Wars. It's not science fiction. It looks like
Especially
it.
book two. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, especially book two. But some of the designs had some science fiction ideas behind them. So that comes from my love for science fiction and my overall interest in some of those themes. So they come from this, like even Spike, for example, is very much. Yeah, there are some details on his design that come from an idea that I like to explore, which mixes machine with organic stuff.
Yeah.
And you can see some of that stuff on the designs, but that's not explored at all in the story because that's not the direction that we went in. It's just my tendency to design science fiction stuff with that mix of organic and machine. But there's certainly a space for me to explore that stuff much better in stories, and I want to do it. The thing was that at the time I had these ideas, and my goal was to publish them. And in my career, this has been happening since the beginning, which is I try to do a few different things, and then for a couple of years, nobody answers, or all the answers are negative,
Mm.
and then everybody says yes at the same time.
Mm.
So you need to choose. And that happened was like I wanted to work on create your own stuff, either with people like Brian Benz or Rick Remender, or on my own. And Rick was doing. Me and Rick had already agreed on working on a book. We didn't know what it was going to be, but he at last time he couldn't make it in 2018, I think, because he was starting to work on Deadly Class. 2018 and 19 he couldn't do it. He was working as a showrunner for the TV show.
Yeah.
And then Brian came along. And when Brian came along, Rick got free a few months later because Deadly Class was canceled. And at the same time, a couple of my pitches were accepted in two different publishers. But I was already starting to work on Phenomena.
Yeah.
So like everything else got on hold. And then I got to work with Rick on Righteous Thirst when I finished book 1. And then I got back with Brian to do book 2 and 3. There was a possibility to do again one book of mine, but I wanted to wrap the trilogy for Phenomena because it's going to be 3 books. And at this point, like book 3 is done as well. I finished it.
You're already done.
Yeah, it's done.
Gotcha.
In fact, I finished it just before book 2 was launched. So like in a few months, probably early next year, you're going to get book 3. We're going to sort it, all the trilogy out, bring a bunch of answers about the things that happened in this world. And then hopefully in the future, right now I'm working with Rick again on a new book. And but my plan is in the future to do my own stuff as well. I just, I feel like because I also wanted to work with them, now that they have an opening in their schedule and I have an opening in my schedule, might as well take the chance, because in the future you don't know, if you're going to get this chance again.
Sure.
So I'm taking the chance to keep working with these people for a couple more of years, and then certainly I'm going to get to my stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you're building a really cool body of work too. I mean, I think too,
Yeah.
somebody who's already built an audience like a Rick Remender, right? And folks like that's how I discovered like I'm this great talent finder. But that's how I was first introduced to your work, was on A Righteous Thirst,
Yeah.
right? And seeing that, and I loved it. And now
Thank you.
and then I went back and I read like your Titan Comics Man Plus,
Oh, thank
which,
you.
yeah, you like that's you doing the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you talked about, the interest of machine man fusion. Like
Hmm.
that's hard sci-fi all
Yeah.
over that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is that kind of your first love, that kind of sci-fi? And I guess what are your touch points? What are your favorites?
That is that is something that I've been drawn to since I was a kid, for sure. Like cyborg stuff, the interface between man and machine, absolutely 100%. Like even when I was a small kid, at that point I didn't know really what it was, like, right? But always the robots, the science fiction, the idea of mixing people and machine was always very fascinating to me. When I was like really a little kid, it was obviously Marvel comics, and before that Disney comics. But I quickly got into stuff like Moebius, from over here, European comics when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of science fiction and like very striking and adult imagery that we have over here in European comics, and really well drawn stuff as well.
That'd be
And
like
then I
Metal
discovered,
Hurlant, or like where you
yeah,
get
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would get it's stuff that was first published in Metal Hurlant, or very much inspired by that, by Enki Bilal, for example, Moebius, Trulé. Then I discovered Herman, who also draws very visual stuff, even though much more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into manga when I was a teenager, and just blew my mind. Akira and Ghost in the Shell. I got into all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And like those are my touch points, and then got very much into movies as well. When I found out stuff like Blade Runner and 2001 Space Odyssey just blew my mind. And like stuff like Terminator 2, or but I like all kinds of stuff. I'm very much drawn into historical stuff as well, like Kingdom of Heaven. I love Ridley Scott, so everything that he has done, really, I just love it to bits. Medieval stuff in particular, and video games as well. So I like all kinds of stories and novels. I read all kinds of stuff. But if there is one thing that I'd say that's where I'm always touching, it's usually science fiction, some type of science fiction. Yes.
Yeah. Do you find so you have correct me if I'm wrong, you have 3 girls? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have 3 boys, and
Oh,
they're
nice.
probably of similar, so we're like on like mirror timelines of
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing that you're working all day, right? You're
Yeah.
drawing, you're making all these comics, and then you got the kiddos, right, too,
Yeah.
and you got all that responsibility.
Mhm.
Do you find you still have time and appetite to consume, right? To read? Like what where is that how you want to spend your time when you're making story all day? Is like, "Oh, I'm gonna sit down with this novel," is that still of interest to you?
I very much like, I love spending time with the kids, and there's only I see a lot of parents complaining a lot about not having time. I mean, you're not supposed to have time. It's how it goes.
Yeah.
But and I don't mind it at all. But I do miss a couple of things. Like, one is going to a restaurant
Yeah.
and just eating a meal peacefully.
Uh-huh.
We get to do that because my mother, and like, she lives nearby, so she will take care of the kids sometimes, but you just can't go whenever you want. That's how it goes. And number two is just like having time to go to the movies, watch a movie, or sit down and read it for like 1 hour.
Mhm.
That's gone out of the window, because my daughters are 3 years old, twins, and the older one 6 years old. So they demand a lot of attention, obviously. Like, that's the stuff that I miss the most. I still read as much as I possibly can. I just bought a bunch of comics, and I read one yesterday. And for a couple of months before that, I was reading The Three Body Problem by Liu Cixin. Yeah, and it was a great book. And it was just, but in order to find time to read, I need to make an effort. I need to cut something. Like, if I'm reading, I'm not watching a TV show, because you either go with one or the other, and that's just how it goes.
Yep. No, you really have to be precise with
Yeah.
the timing, right? Because you got all those other
Yeah, and I need to force myself a little bit, because It's much easier to watch a TV show than to read a novel, particularly one like Three Body Problem, because it's dense and it's set in China and it's written by a Chinese writer. It is not written as a movie pitch at all. It's a novel. It has structurally is very different. So you need to get into it, and I need to force myself into reading it. And there was a point, like I'm sure you experienced the same thing, which is you start reading a novel, for example, like that, and it's not that long, but it's long enough that because I'm reading just like 20 minutes per day or 15 minutes per day, there comes a time where you've been reading it for a couple of months or for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
And for like a couple of days, for some reason, you can't read, and you think, well, maybe I don't get back to it because I'm not, I feel like I've read enough, but at the same time, I wanted to read all of it. So some of those days I had to force myself to pick it up and read it and get back into the groove of the thing.
Yeah, I have exactly the same. I felt like I was reading Children of Dune for like 8 months. I had it on my nightstand, and I would do like 15 to 20 minutes, but it kind of helps me like commentary on the quality, but like it helps me fall asleep too. So
no, I know.
I'm like falling asleep while I swear I was reading that book for like a whole year.
Yeah, it feels like it's dragging, right?
Yeah.
And I also feel the same thing, for example, with video games. I remember that I was playing what it was. It was a video game. I forgot the name of it, by the guys that made God damn, I can't remember any video game that they made now. So it was a very good video game. The name is gonna pop. It's made by Sam Lake. Control. I remember now the name. Control.
Okay.
So it was Control, and but it dragged for a while. And Control, for those that don't know, like you are inside of a building, and it's like this science fiction, surreal type of thing. A bit like X-Files, but just crazier. And you are the entire time inside of the building, and then in a crazy dimension, and you never leave those spaces, And after like a couple of months, I thought, Jesus, I've had enough of this. Like the video game is really good, but I need to get out of this place because I felt like I was trapped into it. Because like I said, I'm either reading something or I'm playing a video game. So that was all I was doing other than my work for like 2 or 3 months.
You got your one outlet, and that's you're super sucked into it. No, for sure. So here with my kids, they get their own interests, and I kind of get sucked into that. So there's certain worlds now that they're getting pulled into that I get to enjoy with them, which is super fun. Bluey is obviously the one that every parent.
We watch it as well.
Is that the big one for you as well? Like, what are the things that they're doing that you're like, oh, this is fun for me to get to enjoy now too?
So they are very imaginative, and they usually prefer to play with me for something, or with my wife. And they love climbing over me, literally. So that's a big sport over here in this house. But like watching Bluey is something that we did for a while in the mornings. Right now, it's all about Peppa Pig.
Okay.
Yeah. My oldest daughter found it, and she like with Bluey, she enjoyed it, but she was still a bit small. Right now with Peppa Pig, I'm finding it a lot of fun is that she is now following the story from beginning to end. And she knows what's going to happen because now she has seen everything a million times, obviously. So she knows, and she tells me what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it, is like starting to notice like the development of the brain, because my kids are still so small, but starting to watch the development of her brain, particularly the oldest one at 6 years old, and now being able to follow a story and starting to get interested in things and starting to notice like what's outside the norm. For example, my job, because like no one does this over here where I live. And she noticed it like a couple of weeks ago. She noticed that that I draw different from other people. That's not supposed, like grown-ups. And she was asking me, do you draw horses? And I was saying, yeah. Do you draw this? Yeah. And I told her, yeah, I can draw anything, basically. And she make a gesture with her hands. She held them like this, like in a weird, awkward position, and said, can you draw this? And I drew exactly her hand like that. And I blew her mind, and like, that's cool. That you get to do that someone.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cute. A lot of fun.
I'm still enjoying, with the small kids, where I do not have artistic sensibility, certainly not of your caliber, but they think I'm like a really good artist still, right? Like I still get to enjoy that. Like, well, you're the dad, so you're the
Yeah.
adult. So like, but like my 7-year-old he surpassed me a while ago.
Uh,
So so he's
yeah.
definitely the one who will be making comics in the future. Um, Back to Phenomena and
Mhm.
sort of just the connection. Matilda's quest obviously is very focused on, you said you wanted to make sure you added this girl to the trio. So we have Matilda
Mhm.
here. This is returning to her, where she's from, right? Her
Mhm.
her country, her
Yeah.
place, her people, and they're at war.
Mhm.
What for you? You've got the family connection, you've got the three young girls. Like, what was like, what were like the most emotional moments for you in terms of conveying this story, and what really grabbed you about Matilda's quest?
It was just the idea of this kid, her returning home, really, and connecting back with there's family there. Particularly her brother is one of the main characters, is part of one of the factions, and like the fact that she is gone and now she's back, and she comes with a different sensibility of in regards to conflict, particularly. Like, you think she comes with this idea that all of this, what feels like an impending and imminent and inevitable conflict, it's not. That stuff can be avoided. So like, her quest is that she's hard at work to prevent just like this kind of all out war. It's an all age book, but it is a war that's brewing.
Hmm.
And so, and she goes through this like emotional, because she's a kid as well, so she doesn't understand why people don't see that you don't need to actually fight. And she's right. Like, there is no, it's one of those like almost proxy battles that is coming along with really just people that want to fight because they feel that they need to fight. And her journey to try to stop it from happening, and at the same time reconnecting with the place that she's from, that is in her brother, seeing her brother again. And we lift a bit of the mystery, like for example, she has a robot arm, a bit of what happened there. Like, those points were, particularly when she sees her brother for the first time, are really the moments that I felt the most, like we were bringing the most out of the book in emotional terms.
Yeah. You said, going into this, in book one, you're kind of finding the story, and then by
Mhm.
the end, you're seeing, what it is. Book two, all that going
Yeah.
into it. What do you think? What was like your favorite shift from book one to book two, either in the way you collaborated with Brian or just in terms of your own understanding of this world? Like, what to you makes book two stand out from the first go?
What makes it stand out is really what you said. Like, we knew precisely what we were doing now on book two. On book one is something that transpired to us, like when we were in the middle of the process,
Hmm.
what type of book, the tone, all of those things. um because me and Brian are both, we have some experience, particularly Brian. Like, you feel as you are working what fits the tone and what doesn't. But on book two, we just, it's not a question of feelings. Like, what you're doing at this point. We know the tone, so we create from the beginning with that tone in mind. There is no left out stuff almost on book two. And it's like that. That frame of work is very different already. And I do believe that it's, sometimes you might think that like a complete blank piece of paper is where you can be the most free to imagine the stuff. But I do believe that sometimes when you have a set of rules, you can be even more imaginative, because you have a foundation to create on top. And if you have a solid foundation, you can go a bit further, and you can start thinking about, and I think we do that on book one as well already, with particularly a place like the Golden City of Ice, which is like, we create it but we destroy it. So like, we breaking the toys that you make. It's an important thing to do in a fictional narrative, I think, to bring it value, and to bring it, like, for the reader to feel like something is happening of value, of worth. And we do that in book two, and you can make it with much more precision and knowing the consequences much better, which allows you a much bigger control of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. One
Hmm.
of my favorite things that you do in Phenomena especially is, like, just huge cityscapes,
Hmm.
but it's also, especially, like, in this one, you've got, like, kind of these, supernatural, these fantastic like, a huge eye. It's just
Hmm.
like it's just there,
Yeah,
right in the
yeah.
middle of this. Is that, like, for you, like, how much of the city, like, do you build maps? Do you have, like, because I know you have, like, a background in architecture as
Hmm.
well, like, city design, like, how far beyond the page does it go for you?
Well, each I'm an architect as well. I have I even have a master's in architecture, and I worked for a year as an architect. But I
Yeah,
was already too much into comics. I've been into comics my entire life, but at that point, I was in touch with CB Cebulski at Marvel,
yeah.
so I was already like, "This is I don't want to do this shit. I want to do comics."
Yeah.
And so I have, but I think there are no maps per se for the city that I drew. For one, on book two, it's London with a coat of magic on top of it, if you want, with a coat
Mhm.
of science fiction, with a coat of imagination on top of it. So, like for example, the eye that you mentioned, that's a giant eye. That's because I was drawing a landscape of like me and Brian. Brian said, "Oh, let's do like." Because on book one you have Toronto in Canada,
Mhm.
and now he said let's go to Europe and do, for example, London. So I started designing some of the stuff, and I used a photograph of London, for example, and I designed like all the main elements, like the Thames River, the famous bridges. You have the Big Ben to make sure that it's recognizable as London, and then add all the crazy stuff that I could think of. I was looking at references, and I this stuff with big fishes, and but including the London double deck bus, stuff like that. And the London Eye, which is that Ferris wheel, is called the London Eye. And then I said, why not an actual eye instead of
Okay. Yeah.
that's just something that popped in the spur of the moment type of stuff. So that happened a lot on this book because it's part of the fabric of the narrative, really, this type of imaginative stuff.
Yeah.
So I let myself guide by my intuition when we are creating. And there are no, because it's London, I didn't feel the need to draw a map. You just need to do it well enough so that it seems like everything is planned and there is much more to it than there really is. But I think that there is a fake feeling. I feel like a misinterpretation of people that comes from people that sometimes they see these expansive and expensive as well, but expansive landscapes and expansive stories, and they feel like they have a million stories in it. They really don't. Okay, we are telling the main story, and yeah, I could pick a character and we could make a chapter with that character,
Mm.
but it's like Star Wars feels like it has 1,000 stories in it. It doesn't. It has the main trilogy, and everything that came after it kind of disappointed everybody because you really like the main story. All the stuff was built just to support that main narrative with the three characters, with Leia and Solo and Luke, and then Darth Vader and all that. And once that was solved, like all of it was solved. And as much as you want to go back and to explore, you can create cool stuff, but you will never be able to bring the same punch when the original story was made, because all that stuff that feels like expansive and that there's a lot of meat to the bone really doesn't. It's just fake. It feels like it has a million stories in it, and that's part of this type of epic type of storytelling. But it's same thing with Lord of the Rings, for example. It feels like it has a million stories in it. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It has the main story that we were told. And then when they talk about stuff that happened 10,000 years ago or something like that,
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool to hear the characters talk about it. But if you go back and tell that story, it's never going to be as interesting.
As someone who has tried and failed to read, The Silmarillion, like, 3 times, I I definitely agree. I've never made it very far. That's an interesting perspective. So I think, fairly unlikely to see any Phenomena spinoffs, right? Like, you've got book 3 is gonna come out next year, you're gonna have your trilogy told, and you'll be pretty happy with that, yeah?
if this is all that we get to make, yeah, surely. But we could certainly like push it forward. Like we have ideas for more stuff to bring the because like we aren't afraid to, at least I am, and I know Brian is as well, but I'm not afraid to just break the toys that we made, so we can play with it. I think the world is plastic enough that we can make more of it. Like if it is a huge success, the next Harry Potter, I mean, if someone gives me a lot of money and say we want to make a spin-off, I'll do the spin-off that we want to do. Just give me a lot of money for it. But I'm fine with that. But
Yeah.
I don't believe that stories have these like infinite possibilities at their heart. I think it's a fake perception that
Yeah. Well, and
we have nowadays.
it seems important when you're building a fictional world that as a reader, like there's a sense that that there's a mystery out there that
Mhm.
adds to everything and that it feels exciting and like there is potential. But when you actually zoom in the lens, like it's not built to zoom in the lens,
It's
right?
fake.
It's like,
It's
it's
fake.
not, yeah, it's fake. It's just environment of a sort.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that adds to the main thing that you are telling, and like it's good to feel that. I think it's I like to build those types of stories very much. I like to add as much stuff as I possibly can to the backgrounds and to the like to secondary narratives, as much as we can add to it without disturbing the main story, I think it's very rewarding for the reader. And it's great that you can have a kid, that's a dream, crack open the book and read it and then end it and just keep thinking about it, and can keep thinking about that. There is this big spread that it's not really a spoiler, but it's in the middle of the book of Phenomena Book 2, this huge spread when Mathilde's brother shows her and all the other characters where she's really from. So he takes them there. I'm sorry, and it's like this neighborhood of old London houses that has a big skeleton of a dragon. We never explore really what happened there or why it is there, but it is. I think it's a cool thing for people to see and to imagine what happened, and whatever they make up in their minds. That's cool. We don't need to have a flashback showing that bit.
Right, right, of fighting the dragon. Well, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, the way that you both have been telling phenomena this whole time is like kind of anything can be anywhere.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is just the world and those are the rules.
Yeah.
And it's just anything goes, right? It's kind of fair
Mhm.
game. So yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. I didn't even think it wasn't even occurring to me to think to ask how did a dragon get here?
Mhm.
I was just thinking that's a really cool dragon fossil.
Yeah,
Like
and that
that
was
was
the
it.
point of the drawing. Really, was not to make you wonder or get distracted. It is exactly what I was saying. Is like, let's get this stuff, but not mess the main narrative. Okay, let's
Mhm.
try. It looks cool. It feels like it belongs to the world. Then we get it there. If it puts you out of the story, or if it makes you wonder too much, oh, how did that get there? Like there's the eye, for example. The eye is weird. I get it. So like
Yeah.
Brian had that great idea of that he basically stole from SNL sketch, which is, I think it was with I can't remember. He sent me the sketch. Two famous actors, two famous comedians, and they are just looking at the camera and saying, "What is that?" And the other guy comes and say, "What the hell is that?" And they stay there for like a couple of minutes, and we never know what they are seeing.
Mm, mm.
But on our book, we see Spike and another character just going, "What is that?" And they are looking at the eye, and the
Yeah.
other guy says, "I don't know. It's just there, man."
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just there. So book two's out now. Folks can
Yeah.
check out book one and book two. I highly recommend it. Again, like it's really, I
Thank you
think
very much.
all ages storytelling is like some of the hardest stuff to do, where it is
Mhm.
genuinely like, this can reach a wide range of ages. And this is a really good example of that kind of storytelling in comics.
Well, thanks.
What can you tease about? You said book three's done.
Mhm.
Obviously, you don't want to spoil anything, but like, what can you tease about kind of what is in store for readers come next year when book three's out?
Oh, book three is really like we kind of went with let's see what this world is all about. Now we focused on and we focus a little bit on Spike, I think, on book one, and the kids are just along for the adventure. Then on book two you go with Mathilde, and in the end of book two we really pivot to Bolden, and it's pretty clear that the book 3 is about him. It's about him going back to where he's from, and really is about his connection to the phenomena itself, and we explain kind of what happened and the origin of this world, and we explore that part, and also we go back a little bit to Spike and to his origin, where he came from and all that. So that's what people can expect: a lot more answers and another grand adventure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, folks, keep an eye for that. Now, I do want to ask you as well. So I think it was last year at New York Comic Con, it was announced you're going to be exclusive with Giant Generator, right? Which
Yeah.
is Rick Remender's comics company,
Mhm.
alongside some other really incredible creators. You got Daniel Acuna, Paul
Mhm.
Ezquerra. What's the status of, so like since Phenomena's done,
Mhm.
like, does that mean you can do more Phenomena?
Oh
Or are
yeah.
you like totally Giant Generator from here on out?
No, yeah, this is something that Rick proposed to me, and it's basically his idea was to provide us that while we are working with him on books, to provide us with a stable conditions where we know we're gonna get paid, with an advancement from Image, all that. So that we have the best possible conditions to work on freely on a creator-owned book without having to think about getting other sources of payment or anything like that. And it's really like, it's exclusive because I'm not supposed to do any other interiors, but I wouldn't do any other interiors while I'm doing another book because I simply don't have the time to do that. So that's all there is to it. And it's exclusive to the book that I'm going to do with him, that we decided that was going to be the next thing that I was going to do. Because we did Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, we had a great time with it, but in the end we immediately said we need to do something else again as soon as possible. So as I was working on Phenomena book 2 and 3, I told him, let me wrap this trilogy, because the idea was I was going to do Phenomena, then Righteous Thirst, that was already agreed, and then I was going back to do Phenomena book 2. But I said to Rick, let me do book 2 and 3 and get it done, so that I can focus more than, for example, a year to the next thing that we do together, and will not be limited by anything else that is still impending. Like, for example, if I left book 3 to be done. So that was that, and the exclusive thing is just for the duration of the next book, whatever it might be, and we are working on it. We have stuff written, we have stuff drawn for it, like designs and things like that for characters. We just are holding a little bit longer before we started because he asked me to help him out with The Sacrificers, which is another one of his books that he's doing with Max Fiumara, and he wanted me to draw 3 issues for it, which I drawn one already, and I'm drawing the second one. So once we wrap this 3-issue run that I'm doing, we are going straight into our next thing, which then it should be a while before you see it. We want to pack up a bunch of issues and all that, but it is already begun, and I'm super excited to get to it. It's one of the things that I've wanted to do my entire life. One of the genres that I wanted to tackle. So you can expect something special and something very different again from what I've been doing.
Awesome. So, I mean, obviously you can't, it hasn't been announced yet.
No.
It's going to be a project with Rick.
Yeah.
Different flavor than A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance?
Different flavor from anything that I've done.
Anything. Okay. That's interesting. Exciting.
Yeah. New genre.
Yeah. All right. So I look forward to that being formally announced so we can see what exactly that's going to be.
For now, like, people can get, all, of course, Phenomena. Righteous Thirst has been collected in a really nice hardcover.
Yeah.
You have also the two trade paperbacks. That's the complete story. You have Phenomena book 1. Phenomena book 2 just came out, and you will have Sacrifices pretty soon, like in a couple of months. My first issue, which is issue 10, is going to come out, and the 11 and 12 after that. So this year you're going to get a lot of stuff from me.
Yeah, very cool. What can you tease about your Sacrificers work? You're jumping in for an arc. Rick and Max have built this world. Like, what's got you excited about that?
Oh, like I'm one of the reasons that I wanted to work with Rick was because I basically loved all of his books. Like, he's one of my favorite writers, was one of my favorite writers, and still is. And I'm always interested in anything he does. He does, like I feel a lot of affinity with the way that he thinks about story, and the way that he explores like a bunch of different things that are unconnected to between themselves. All types of genres as well. And this one was like, I love fantasy and I love anthropomorphic stuff. So when I saw this one, he sent me the first 3 issues when they came out. I've now read, of course, in preparation to my own work, I've read all of the stuff that he had available at that point. It's a challenge because you are coming into a create your own world that was not designed by me, and you need to get into it. And I had to get into it pretty quickly because he had that need for an artist to fill in a thing, and he was thinking of me, and it was just like, here you go, there's a script for you. I had to read and get into all that stuff. It was a lot of fun as well because I do like that type of challenge, and Max has created incredible visuals for it. So for me, my concern was I want to just get the feeling right of the book, and at the same time just bring as much as I possibly can from my type of stuff, the stuff that I do best, but try to not leave any kind of traps for Max in terms of stuff that I will, because it's inevitable that I will have to design something. I've already done it, design a city or a new place that I've just designed for just today. I drew a place that he had never done before, so it felt on my lap to do it. And you try to just build something that feels like it belongs to the world that he created and not something completely alien, so that he doesn't struggle with it when it's his turn to go back there, because it's going to happen for sure.
Well, you should design a character that's a horse riding a bicycle. I hear artists love both of those things.
Yeah. I'm good with horses, but bicycle is something that I don't think I ever drew it. I never say to a writer like, don't write this or that. I know that some do. I don't say that, because I always say whatever the story asks, I'm gonna do it. There's no problem with that. It can be a double page spread of a city, like I'm fine with that. It can be a crowd of people, I'm fine with that. But the story asks it, I'll do it. But a bike, I never did a bike, and I hope I don't get to.
Nice. Now, any chance, given all the anthropomorphic characters in the Sacrificers, that you will give a cameo to your Marvel Ultimate Universe creation, Miles Morhamus, the pig Miles Morales crossover?
Funny that you ask, because I did draw a couple of pigs on issue 10.
Yeah.
So it kind of is there.
It's in play.
Because Miles Morhamus was like a pretty realistic looking pig.
Yeah.
So
concerningly so.
That's nice, because I hadn't thought of that connection, but it kind of is there. So you got it.
There you go. Perfect. Amazing. I love that. Yeah, I love bringing up that image when people ask about it.
That was a fun. That was a fun gig, Ultimate FF, for sure.
Yeah. Good. Cool. All right. So I think that's most of what. Oh, I mean, let's ask. As long as we're talking Sacrificers and working with Rick, what's the biggest difference between working with Rick and Brian as creators?
Oh, I feel like for most of the time, Rick's way of thinking is very much like mine. It's very practical. Let's sort out what happened and how it happens, and let's make the sequence work right away from the visual standpoint of a comic book. And he thinks like that. I think like that. Like that's if you have an idea, does it work, yes or no? That's our primary concern. And Brian does not think like that at all. Brian thinks completely opposite to that. He thinks of what is the heart of the matter here, what is the core issue here, and how can we address it. And he writes like that, making sure that the core of the idea is present in all the time, and that the emotion of the characters are present all the time. and not so much straight to a visual representation of that thing. Then I sometimes, for example, with Rick, I most of the scripts I don't really change anything, and with Brian, like sometimes I do a lot of cut and paste. I move stuff around, to redistribute his own ideas and to adapt it to mine. But that's something. It's not because it's wrong. It's just because me and him have that kind of relationship where we have carte blanche to move the stuff and adapt it to our own needs, in the same way that he picks my designs and he kind of gives them voices that are not exactly what I was thinking of. So we play with each other's stuff a lot. And so that's pretty much it. Like Rick and I feel like we think very much alike, and me and Brian don't, and that gives origin to two completely different collaborations and to two completely different outcomes, both very much valuable, very much valued. And that's why you get completely different things from people teaming up with different people.
Makes sense. Andre, I really appreciate you joining.
No,
thank your time, and like people should check out Phenomena. I'll link it here in the show notes after we're done for anybody who wants to check it out. And obviously I'll be plugging it over on CBH stuff throughout the years. We got one listener question just real quick, just popped in. What is your favorite Marvel book that you've worked on?
Oh, that's a good question. There is right away in the beginning of my career, I was always asking them from the beginning, like, give me an ongoing. I want to do something bigger. I don't want to be doing fill-in issues or anything like that, because that's how you start, and that's how I started.
Yeah.
So they gave me Avengers AI, which I really enjoyed working with Sam Humphries. It was almost like a creator-owned book inside the Marvel universe. It was a weird book that I loved doing that one. And then I had a lot of fun drawing Black Panther and working with Nnedi Okorafor, because she's a great writer and she brought a lot of ideas. She's Nigerian American, so she had a lot of references from Nigerian artists, for example, that she sent me for patterns on clothes and on flags. Like the city that I drew was based on artwork from a Nigerian artist about his own interpretation of what an African science fiction city would look like. So that was a very different type of book. And in the end, one of the last gigs that I did, or the last substantial gig that I did at Marvel, it was not the last one, but it was the last substantial thing that I did there, which was an issue of Silver Surfer, like a big issue, 30-something pages, which was something that I was dying to do, because Moebius did the Silver Surfer with Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And I wanted so much to also try my hand at the character, and I think it was a good bookhand moment for me to kind of wrap it up, my time there with that one.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks to Birdner for the question there.
Yeah.
All right. We'll wrap it up. We'll let you go. Andre, seriously, thank you so much for joining in. Appreciate it. It was great talking.
Thank you very much. Thank you.